You weep. Your tears are salt, and the river does not like salt. Why do you poison my waters with your grief? I am nothing in my own house. I am a woman without a child. What is a woman without a child?
Here is my fish, my flesh. Take it and you shall conceive. But on one condition.
What is the condition?
You must not give her fish to eat. Any day she does, she dies.
15 years before the fish lay in the dust and the girl's body twisted in agony, Arubi was known not as Mama Adamma, but simply as the wife of Nwabueze. She was a quiet woman, with hands that were always busy pounding yam, weaving baskets, drawing water from the stream. Her face was a calm mask, but behind it was a well of sorrow that never ran dry. She had been married to Nwabueze for 7 years, and her belly remained flat. In the village of Umuchuku, a woman's worth was measured by the children she bore. A barren woman was an incomplete woman, a vessel that the gods had chosen to leave empty. Arubi endured the sideways glances of the other women, their whispers that stopped when she approached. She endured the sharp, pitying sighs of her mother-in-law, who would look at her and shake her head as if looking at a failed harvest. Nwabueze was a good man, by the standards of their village. He was a farmer with broad shoulders and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. He did not beat her. He did not shout at her in public. He provided her hut with firewood and yams from his farm. But his patience, like a rope stretched too tight for too long, was beginning to fray. He would come to her hut at night, not with the gentle hands of a husband seeking his wife, but with the grim determination of a farmer trying to force a stubborn seed to sprout in dry ground. When nothing grew, the silence between them became heavier. "Arubi," he said one evening. After the evening meal, he sat on a low stool, cleaning his cutlass with a stone. He did not look at her. "My mother spoke to me today." Arubi's hands stilled over the clay pot she was scrubbing. She knew what was coming. The signs had been there for months, the pointed conversations, the elders dropping by to share palm wine the way Nwabueze's mother, Adaeze, would stare at her with a look that was a mixture of pity and accusation. "She says a man cannot build a lineage with a single tree," Nwabueze continued. "She says I must take another wife." The words hung in the air, sharp and cold as a cutlass blade. Arubi had known this day would come. In her heart, she had been preparing for it, building a wall around her feelings, brick by brick, so that when the blow finally fell, it would not shatter her. But now that the moment was here, she found that the wall was made of nothing. The blow cut through her like a spear through smoke. "I see," she said. Her voice was calm. "I have not agreed yet," Nwabueze said, finally looking at her. There was a softness in his eyes, a remnant of the love they had once shared. "I wanted to tell you myself. I wanted to hear what you would say." Arubi placed the pot aside and wiped her hands on her wrapper. She looked at her husband, this man she had cooked for, prayed for, bled for in her monthly cycles of disappointment. What could she say? That he was wrong? That she would bear him a child if he only waited a little longer? She had been saying that for 7 years. The words had lost their meaning. "A man needs sons," she said quietly, repeating the wisdom of their ancestors. "If I cannot give them to you, I cannot stand in your way." Nwabueze let out a long breath, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had expected a fight, perhaps tears, perhaps curses. He did not know how to respond to this quiet acceptance. He rose, placing a hand on her shoulder for a brief moment, the touch hesitant, as if he were not sure he had the right to touch her anymore. Then he left. That night, Arubi did not cry. She sat on her sleeping mat, her back against the cool mud wall of her hut, and stared into the darkness. The sounds of the village faded around her, the distant beat of a drum, the bark of a dog, the low murmur of voices from other huts. She felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller, until she was nothing but a point of emptiness in the vast dark night. The new wife arrived 3 moons later. Her name was Iye. She came from a village beyond the great forest, a place with a different dialect and different customs. She was younger than Arubi, with a round, open face and a laugh that seemed to bubble up from her like water from a spring. She was not beautiful in the way the village women measured beauty. Her hips were not wide, her neck was not long, but there was a vitality about her. A sense of life and warmth that drew people to her like moths to a flame. From the first day, Iye tried to be kind to Arubi. On the day of her wedding, after the palm wine had been shared and the elders had given their blessings, she came to Arubi's hut with a small pot of groundnuts she had roasted herself. "I am Iye," she said, kneeling at Arubi's doorstep, her head bowed in a show of respect. "I know I am a stranger here. I do not come to take your place. I come to be your sister." Arubi looked at the younger woman kneeling before her. She saw the sincerity in Iye's eyes, and it only made the pain sharper. How could she hate this woman? How could she not? The woman was not her enemy, yet her very existence was a daily reminder of Arubi's failure. She took the pot of groundnuts with a stiff nod. "You are welcome," Arubi said. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. The months that followed were a slow, quiet torture for Arubi. She watched from her doorway as Iye's belly began to swell. She watched Nwabueze's face light up with a hope and joy she had never seen there before. The village women who had once whispered about Arubi now gathered around Iye, laughing and singing, celebrating the life growing inside her. Arubi became a shadow in her own home, a piece of furniture that was still there but no longer seen. When Iye gave birth to a son, the entire village celebrated. Drums beat for 3 days. Palm wine flowed like water. Nwabueze danced in the center of the compound, his chest puffed out with pride, holding the squalling infant aloft for all to see. They named him Chibueze, God is King. Arubi watched from the edge of the crowd. She did not dance. She did not drink. She watched Iye, who sat on a stool surrounded by the older women, her face flushed with the triumph of motherhood. Iye caught Arubi's eye from across the crowd. For a moment, the younger woman's smile faltered. She saw the pain in Arubi's face, and a shadow of guilt passed over her own. But the moment passed, and she turned back to the women praising her, holding her son closer to her chest. That night, Arubi left the village. She did not plan it. Her feet simply carried her out of the compound, past the sleeping huts, past the goat pen, and down the narrow path that led to the river. The air was cool and carried the scent of damp earth and night-blooming flowers. The river Mami was not the main river that the village used for fishing and washing. It was a smaller tributary, a place where the water ran deep and dark, fed by a hidden spring deep in the forest. The elders told stories about the river Mami stories that mothers used to frighten their children into obedience. They said the river was a living thing, that it had a spirit, a woman with the tail of a fish who lived in its deepest pools. They said she was beautiful and treacherous, that she gave gifts to those who pleased her, but that her gifts came with a price. Arubi had heard the stories all her life. She had never believed them. But as she stood on the bank that night, looking into the dark, still water, she found herself speaking to the river as if it could hear her. "I have nothing," she whispered to the water. "My husband has taken another wife. She has given him a son. I am nothing in my own house. I am a woman without a child. What is a woman without a child? I am a tree that bears no fruit. I am a field that will not yield. I am..." Her voice broke. The tears she had held back for so long finally came. She sank to her knees on the damp bank, her shoulders shaking with sobs that were torn from the deepest part of her. She wept for her empty womb. She wept for the husband who had turned away from her. She wept for the years she had spent waiting, hoping, praying to gods who seemed not to hear. She did not know how long she wept. Time seemed to stop, the world shrinking to the small patch of earth where her knees pressed into the mud, the sound of her own sobs, and the gentle, endless whisper of the river flowing before her. When her tears finally subsided, she became aware of a change. Arubi lifted her head. The moon had slipped behind a cloud, and the river was a sheet of blackness. But in the center of that blackness, there was a light. It was a soft, pale light, like the light of a firefly trapped underwater, but it was growing brighter. Arubi blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her, that grief had finally stolen her senses. But the light did not disappear. It grew, spreading outward in a circle of shimmering silver on the surface of the water. And then, from the center of that light, something rose. At first, Arubi thought it was a woman. She saw shoulders, a neck, a head crowned with long, dark hair that clung to the skin like wet moss. The woman rose from the water without a ripple, as if she were being lifted on a palm frond. The light surrounded her, casting a soft glow on her face. She was beautiful. Her face was the color of the dark earth after rain, her cheekbones high and sharp, her lips full and curved in a smile that was not entirely kind. Her eyes were the color of deep water, dark, bottomless, holding secrets that no living person knew. And below her waist, where legs should have been, was the long, powerful body of a fish, covered in scales that glinted like coins in the silver light. Arubi's breath caught in her throat. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. She tried to rise, but her legs would not move. She was frozen, held in place by the gaze of the river Mami. The spirit woman tilted her head, regarding Arubi with an expression that was curious, almost amused. Her voice, when she spoke, was not a sound that came through the air. It was a voice that spoke directly inside Arubi's mind, a voice that was ancient and cold and gentle all at once. "You weep," the voice said. "Your tears are salt, and the river does not like salt. Why do you poison my waters with your grief?" I am sorry," Arubi stammered. She tried to prostrate herself, to show the respect that was due to a spirit, but her body remained locked in place. "I did not mean to offend. I only came to be alone." "You came because you are empty," the river mommy said. "I know emptiness. I have lived in the deep places for 1,000 years. What is it you seek, child of dust? What would fill the void inside you?" Arubi's lips trembled. The answer came from her mouth before she could stop it, the words raw and desperate. "A child! I want a child!" The river mommy's smile widened, revealing teeth that were white and sharp, like the teeth of a fish. "A child," she echoed. "A simple thing. A common thing. Every woman in your village has one, yet you do not. Why is that?" "I do not know," Arubi whispered. "I have prayed to the gods of my fathers. I have drunk the herbs the healers gave me. I have done everything. Nothing works. The gods of your fathers are deaf," the river mommy said, a note of contempt in her mental voice. "They sit in their abode and watch. They do not act. I act. I can give you what you seek. I can fill your belly with a child. But I am not a generous spirit. My gifts come with a rule." Arubi's heart pounded in her chest. Hope, a feeling she had almost forgotten, surged through her. "Anything," she said. "I will do anything. Do not promise so quickly," the river mommy warned. "Listen well, child. I will give you a fish. Not any fish, a fish from my own river, a fish that has drunk from the spring that gives life. You will take this fish to your hut. You will cook it with your own hands. You will eat it, every part of it, the flesh, the bones, the head, the tail. You will eat it alone, in silence, without a single soul knowing what you have done. And when you have eaten, you will conceive. Before the next moon is full, you will know that a child grows in your belly." Arubi listened, her mind racing. It seemed simple, too simple. She waited for the catch. "But there is one rule," the river mommy said, and her voice grew cold as the deep water she came from. "One rule, and it is unbreakable. The child I give you will be a child of the river. The river's children do not eat fish, never. From the day it is born until the day it dies, this child must never ever eat fish. Not a single bite, not a single scale. If this child eats fish, the river will take back what it has given. The child will be lost to you, in a way worse than death. Do you understand?" Arubi's mind was filled with the image of a child. Her child, a baby with her eyes, a baby she could hold in her arms. The rule seemed small, insignificant. Fish was food, but it was not the only food. There was yam, cassava, beans, vegetables from the farm. She could keep a child away from fish. It would be easy. "I understand," she said. "I will do as you say." "Swear it," the river mommy commanded. "Swear by the water that flows through the earth, by the blood in your veins, by the life of the child you seek. Swear that you will keep this rule, and that you will tell no one of this night." "I swear," Arubi said, her voice firm. "By the water, by my blood, by the life of my child, I swear." The river mommy nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. She lifted a hand from the water, her fingers long and webbed, and made a gesture over the surface. The water swelled, and from the depths, a fish leaped into the air. It was a beautiful fish, with scales that shone like bronze in the silver light. It landed on the bank at Arubi's feet, flopping once, twice, and then lying still. "Remember your oath," the river mommy said, her form beginning to fade, the light dimming around her. "One bite. That is all it takes. One bite, and the river will remember." She sank back into the water, the silver light disappearing with her. Arubi looked down at the fish. It lay at her feet, glistening in the moonlight. She reached out with trembling hands and picked it up. It was cold and heavy, its scales smooth against her palms. She wrapped it in the edge of her wrapper, rose to her feet, and walked back toward the village. Arubi did not sleep that night. She built a small fire in her cooking hut, the one she used only for herself, and she cooked the fish. The smell that rose from the pot was unlike any she had ever smelled, rich and strange, like the river after a storm, like the deep earth, like the first rain. Her mouth watered, but her hands trembled as she stirred. When the fish was cooked, She sat alone in the darkness of her hut and ate. She ate the flesh, which melted on her tongue like butter. She crunched the bones between her teeth, swallowing the sharp fragments. She sucked the head, tasting the eyes, the brain, the strange gelatinous flesh behind the gills. She ate the tail, chewing the fins until there was nothing left. When she was done, she licked her fingers clean and sat in the silence. For a long time, nothing happened. She began to wonder if it had all been a dream, a fantasy born of desperation. She was about to rise and wash the pot when a warmth spread through her belly. It was a gentle warmth at first, like the heat of a palm wine that has been sitting in the sun. Then it grew, spreading through her limbs, filling her with a sense of fullness she had never felt before. She put her hand on her belly and smiled. A month later, she missed her monthly bleeding. 2 months later, her belly began to swell. The village was astonished. The women who had whispered about her barrenness now whispered about her miracle. Nwabweze looked at her with a new respect, perhaps even a flicker of the old love. Iye came to her with congratulations, but Arubi saw the flicker of confusion in her eyes, the unspoken question. How? Arubi said nothing. She kept her secret locked in her heart, a treasure she guarded fiercely. When her time came, she gave birth to a daughter. She was a beautiful baby, with skin the color of honey and eyes that were dark and deep like the river at night. Arubi named her Adamma, beautiful daughter. Nwabweze was pleased, though Arubi knew he had hoped for a son. Iye, who had by then given him another child, a daughter, was gracious, but Arubi did not care. She had her child. She had been given a gift. From the moment Adamma was placed in her arms, Arubi's life had a new purpose. She guarded the child with a fierce, almost obsessive love. But the river Mami's warning was never far from her mind. She watched Adamma's diet with a vigilance that bordered on paranoia. When Adamma was old enough to eat solid food, Arubi made sure that fish was never placed before her. When the village women shared meals, Arubi would hover, ensuring that no one slipped a piece of fish onto her daughter's plate. At first, people thought it was just a mother's fussiness. But as Adamma grew, and Arubi's prohibition against fish continued, people began to talk. Why does that woman not let her daughter eat fish? They asked. Fish is good for a growing child. It makes the bones strong. Arubi would smile and say, she has a weak stomach. Fish does not agree with her. The lie was thin, but people accepted it. In a village where everyone knew everyone's business, a mother's peculiarity was soon forgotten. But Arubi never forgot. She watched Adamma like a hawk, and the rule was kept. Years passed. Nwabweze's household grew. Iye, it turned out, was a fertile woman. She gave her husband 3 more sons and 2 more daughters. The compound, which had once been quiet with only Arubi's silent presence, became a bustling, noisy place, filled with the sound of children's laughter, children's quarrels, and the constant, tireless work of raising a large family. Arubi's position in the household changed. She was no longer the barren wife, the object of pity. She was now the senior wife, the mother of 1 daughter in a house full of Iye's children. But seniority did not bring her power. In a polygamous family, power came from numbers. Iye had the numbers. Her sons were many, her daughters were many, and they grew up in a tight, loyal group with Iye at their center. Adamma grew up on the margins of this group. She was a quiet, thoughtful child, with her mother's deep eyes and her mother's patient hands. She learned to cook, to weave, to tend the vegetable patch. She was a good girl, obedient and kind, but she was also lonely.